In previous lessons, we looked at the decision if to work and excuse me, for how long. Now we're going to look at more of a choice of a job based on characteristics other than pay. So we're going to look at things like the work environment, we're going to look at risk of injury, and the generosity of the employee benefits. So workers, their goal is to maximize their utility. And so we talked about this with the indifference functions, the budget constraint, choosing that point which will maximize your utility level. So they're interested in both the pecuniary and non-pecuniary aspects of the job, the money part and the non-monetary part. Now, if all jobs were exactly alike and located in the same place, same time, the decisions would be only depend on compensation. But this isn't always the case. So let's look at an example. Let's say there are two workers, or two employers rather. So you have employer X and employer Y. And so you have the wage and conditions. Hate this. Sorry about that. Let's do this another way. So employer X, employer Y, you have wage and then conditions. So let's say both employer X and employer Y paid $10 an hour. Okay, so they both pay the same wage. But for employer X at job X, it's a clean and a safe environment. Whereas employer Y has a dirty and dangerous environment. So which one are you going to choose? Well, clearly you're going to choose employer X. They're both paying the same, but employer X has a cleaner and safer environment. So because of this $10 is not an equilibrium wage for both firms. And if we look further at this, firm Y is going to have to pay a higher wage. They're going to have to. Because if they want to attract anybody, they're going to have to pay higher than X because they don't quite have those same options, same conditions. So this is where compensating wage differentials comes from. So compensating wage differentials is the extra wage a firm must pay of conditions in order to be competitive. So they have to pay more or less, which we'll talk about, in order to remain competitive with other firms out there because the other aspects are not as good. So basically what they are doing is they are compensating workers for better conditions. So if we go back to the previous example where firm X and firm Y were both paying $10 an hour, firm X had clean, safe conditions, firm Y had dirty conditions. Now let's say that firm Y, which had the dirty conditions and dangerous ones, is now going to pay $11 instead of $10. So does that mean that all people are going to go from company X, company Y? No. More likely some would, but not all. Because that differential, some people may prefer that safe environment, put a lot of weight on that, and say, sure, they're going to pay $1 an hour, but it's still dangerous there. So I'm going to stay here with X. Whereas others will say, I don't care about safety as much. I'm going to go over to Y because they're paying more. Okay. So there are two reasons for compensating wage differentials. The first is if there's a social need because people are given, so that people are given some incentive to do undesirable work, or if there's an individual need because of options and being able to pay more for undesirable work. So it's either in society it needs to get done, or for the firm they need to pay. They need workers, and it's just not going to work without it, so they have to pay a little more. Now, some jobs are especially nasty. Jobs that are very dangerous and very unpleasant. Coal mining, deep sea diving, police, firefighters. There's a lot of risk with these. Now, there's two ways to get people for these. Now, you can either force people to do these, such as with the military draft, or you can induce them to do it voluntarily by incentives or compensating wage differentials. So you pay them more in order to do it. So these compensating wage differentials, they serve as an incentive that individuals receive for accepting those undesirable circumstances, conditions. And what happens is that essentially becomes the price at which good working conditions can be purchased by, or bad ones can be sold to workers. So basically, those wage differentials, it's paying workers to get over or get past those conditions. Now, there's two types of wage differentials. There's positive and negative. So the positive ones, and it's a little counterintuitive, but the positive ones are paying higher wages for those bad conditions. Police, firefighters, sanitation, coal mining, construction. Okay. But there's also negative wage differentials, and that's paying a lower wage for good jobs. And so, for example, professional sports athletes, not the major professional level, but let's say the minor league baseball players, their pay is very, very low. Well, why are there so many people that want to do it? Yes, they think about the potential upside of making money, but even if they know they're probably not going to make it, they still want to keep playing, even though it's at low pay. Why? Because those favorable conditions with that, and because of their preferences, they're willing to take a lower pay for it. So that's where you get the negative wage differentials. So there's a couple conditions in order for wage differentials to work. One, workers need to want to maximize their utility, okay, not their income. If it's all about income, then they wouldn't work. Workers also need to be informed about the work conditions. Right? There cannot be information asymmetry. And the workers must also have a variety of jobs to choose from. They need to have options. And so we're going to continue this discussion a little bit, but this just is the basic setup of the compensating wage differentials.